nothing but a bug. Well, I'm destined to have it.
In the next few years, what we're seeing right now as just a trickle of Chinese-made AAA games is about to turn into a full-on avalanche. And if you want a weird but perfect way to kick off this story, just picture this. Imagine classic Chinese literature smashing headfirst into Dark Souls. That's exactly the vibe right now. You might be wondering, why haven't we seen this before? Why is it only now that China is starting to make a big push into the AAA space? For a long time, the answer was red tape. So much regulation, so many hoops to jump through, and this old belief that China was only interested in mobile games or big MMOs. But all those stereotypes and roadblocks got blown up thanks to the massive success of Black Myth Wukong. This game was the wake-up call. In just 3 days, Black Myth Wukong sold 10 million copies and shot straight up the Steam charts, second only to PUBG in concurrent players. To give you some perspective, those numbers are right up there with Elden Ring and Hogwarts Legacy. And Wukong is not even out on Xbox yet, but that's coming in August. The impact is huge. Game Science's RPG has won awards, saved businesses with its physical release, and just sent shockwaves through the industry. China's not the sleeping giant anymore. China's road to this point was rocky. The Chinese government is famous for its intense approval process on anything creative. On top of that, they actually banned game consoles from the year 2000 until 2015. Once that ban was lifted, mobile gaming started to fade, and console and PC gaming took off like wildfire. Huge companies like Tencent and Sony started pouring money in. Sony even kicked off the PlayStation China Heroes project to help fund and spotlight Chinese games. With Wukong now considered the country's first real AAA hit, the numbers tell the story. The Chinese games industry has grown from about 10 billion yuan in 2003 to nearly 400 billion now. The country has around 674 million gamers. North America has less than half that number. In other words, China is quickly turning into one of the most important places for games on the planet. After Black Myth Wukong's success, there's a huge wave of new Chinese action RPGs coming up right behind it. You've got Phantom Blade Zero, Tides of Annihilation, AI Limit, Lost Soul Aside, Wuchang Fallen Feathers, Echoes of Yai, and a bunch more. Every one of these has its own spin on the genre. Some of these games have actually been in development for years. Lost Soul Aside, for example, started out as a fan project inspired by Final Fantasy XV and Devil May Cry more than 15 years ago. Now, it's finally close to release and riding the wave of attention that Wukong kicked off. So, how's all this changing the expectations for Chinese games? The industry is basically transforming in real time. It used to be that all the big money and talent were aimed at making mobile games for the local market. Now, there's more confidence, bigger budgets, bigger teams, and way more jobs. The success of Wukong has given publishers proof that a Chinese AAA game could actually sell 30 million copies in 6 months, instead of maybe 3 million if they were lucky. And with that kind of belief, you get way better games. Ari Chen, who runs Eclipse Globe Games, the studio behind Tides of Annihilation, said that his team had the skills to pull off a AAA game long before Wukong's success. His crew includes veterans who've worked on big franchises like Yakuza and Assassin's Creed. China is quickly becoming a great place for top-tier talent from overseas, especially with all the layoffs happening in Western studios. And with so much new energy and investment, it's also keeping homegrown talent at home instead of losing them to other countries. It's not just private companies getting in on this. The Chinese government is now supporting the industry directly. With Phantom Blade Zero, for example, the developer used 3D scans of real ancient Chinese buildings and got extra funding from the government for it. And let's be honest, the Chinese state loves any chance for some soft power. There's no question that these games are being made with both local pride and global audiences in mind. A lot of people are asking why so many of these new Chinese projects are action RPGs. It's partly cultural. There's something about Chinese mythology and geography that just works for the Souls-like formula. You get creepy monsters with wild backstories, misty ancient worlds in chaos, and tons of deep lore that people can argue about online for years. Take Wuchang Fallen Feathers, which is basically putting a Chinese mythological spin on that formula. Phantom Blade Zero blends over-the-top Devil May Cry combat, interconnected Dark Souls maps, and even a bit of Resident Evil's creepy vibe. The genres are blending, and Chinese devs are going all in. Now, you might think having so many games in the same genre is risky. Isn't everyone just fighting over the same slice of the pie? Soulframe Lang, the director of Phantom Blade Zero, says it's not like that at all. Back in the days of live service mobile games, everyone was fighting for your attention every second, and it never ended. Now, with single-player action adventures, you get 20 hours of fun, a clear ending, and then you're free to move on to something else. If you enjoy one Chinese ARPG, you'll probably want to check out another, not because they're all the same, but because the bar for quality keeps rising. If Black Myth Wukong sells well, it just opens up the market for everyone else. Nobody's going to play one game forever. They'll finish it, feel good about it, and then look for the next cool thing. So the success of one helps boost confidence in the others. Soulframe Lang puts it pretty simply. Once players finish a good single-player game, they're more likely to try another one, especially from the same country or studio if the last one was awesome. What's also interesting is how Chinese studios are striking a balance between local and global. These games tell authentic Chinese stories, like Wukong does with Journey to the West, but they also borrow from Western ideas. Tides of Annihilation is a perfect example. It's a Chinese studio making a game about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, set in modern London. The devs actually visited London to study landmarks and talk to locals, but the art and animation are still full of Chinese flair. It's this cool East meets West mashup, and it just works. Bottom line, China is about to become a global heavyweight in the AAA games space. The market was already huge, but now Chinese studios have the money, the talent, the confidence, and the government support to compete with anyone. And with so many Western and Japanese companies focused on live service and microtransactions, it's honestly a relief to see someone going all in on great single-player games again. That's what most gamers actually want. Deep, memorable, single-player adventures with real production values. If you ask people what they miss most about the old days of gaming, this is it. Engaging stories, cool worlds to explore, and games that don't try to take over your life forever. China's resurgence in this space is one of the most exciting and welcome shifts happening in the industry right now. With so many big companies in the West bailing out of what made gaming fun in the first place, maybe it's China's turn to show everyone how it's done. Imagine that.
No one can cast me aside, ever!
So, why are so many players flocking to games coming out of Japan, South Korea, and China right now? Simple. Those devs still chase two things a lot of Western studios keep second-guessing: attractive characters that people actually want to look at, and raw, uncensored fun they design for desire. Look at Stellar Blade, 2B from Nier Automata, the cast of Honkai Star Rail, Tekken Fighters, Cammy in Street Fighter. They are stylish, beautiful, sometimes outright sexy, and the games do not apologize for it. That does not mean shallow. It just means the art teams understand fantasy and aspiration. People like cool armor, flowing hair, ridiculous swords, slick animations. They like flirting with style. Eastern studios lean into that without a shame spiral every time Twitter gets loud. They also put fun back at the top of the checklist. Combat that pops off the screen. Movement that feels like butter. Flashy feedback for every hit. Systems that are deep but readable. From Software turns punishment into pleasure with Elden Ring. Capcom makes every punch in Dragon's Dogma 2 feel like it weighs a ton. MiHoYo Drip feeds dopamine with perfect animation timing. Even the grindiest gacha title still gives you a carnival of particle effects and voice lines when you press a button. Moment-to-moment joy matters, and they build around it. There is another layer. Eastern art direction is not afraid of color or melodrama. Western games often chase gritty realism and washed-out palettes. Eastern games pop. Neon cities in Yakuza, crimson autumn leaves in Ghost of Tsushima, pastel sci-fi in Wuthering Waves. You remember the look instantly. That matters when you are scrolling a store page or a feed and deciding what to try next. They respect fantasy power in a different way. Western studios love to start you as a nobody and keep you weak for 10 hours. A lot of Eastern titles let you feel powerful fast, then challenge you with mastering that power. You get the cool sword early. You unlock wild mobility fast. The ceiling is skill expression, not a drip feed repeat of basic moves you should have had from the start. They also iterate like crazy. Sequels and spin-offs keep familiar engines and refine them. Monster Hunter did this for years. Persona layers systems over a proven formula. Tekken and Street Fighter sharpen the blade rather than throwing it out every cycle. That means the devs can polish instead of rebuilding the wheel, which tends to lead to games that feel smooth and intentional. Monetization is interesting too. Yes, plenty of Eastern games are gacha heavy, but they often over-deliver on free content to keep you in the loop. Generous login rewards, real events, actual updates with meat on the bone. You can feel manipulated, sure, but you can also feel entertained. The trade feels clearer. On the other side, Western live service titles promise a 10-year plan and shut down in 12 months. Players notice. Tone matters. A lot of Western releases now come with lectures, disclaimers, and a nervous PR sheet glued to the box. Eastern studios can be clumsy with writing at times, but they rarely feel like they are scolding the audience. They chase melodrama, sincerity, or ridiculousness. That plays better than the self-loathing sarcasm and corporate safe talk that has crept into many AAA games. Community feedback loops are tight. Look at how fast Korean MMOs patch balance issues. Look at Capcom's fighting game updates. Look at how Genshin listens to cosmetics and QOL demands. They may not give everything, but the cadence is visible. Players feel heard when patches actually do something noticeable every few weeks. Cross-media helps too. Anime, manga, K-pop aesthetics, VTubers, light novels. These are pipelines that funnel style and hype straight into games and back out again. When a character feels like they could star in their own series, players invest harder. It is not that Western games cannot be fun or sexy. Baldur's Gate 3 proves you can give players romance and wild freedom. Helldivers 2 proves you can be pure fun with a smart community loop. But the macro trend is clear. Eastern devs kept betting on style, spectacle, and feel-good design, while big Western publishers chased cinematic prestige, endless monetization experiments, and safe character design that offends no one and excites no one. Have you ever wondered why Capcom, From Software, MiHoYo, and Shift Up keep pumping out bangers? Like every year or two, while these massive Western studios spend 6 years and a boatload of cash on one game. Like, what's really going on? Who's paying the real price here? Not just money, like sleep, health, their relationships. And meanwhile, we're all hyped over slick combat and cool characters, but somewhere, someone's grinding 80-hour weeks just to make it happen. Let's break this down. Back in the day in the West, crunch was like a macho flex. I worked 100 hours a week, bros. Rockstar literally bragged about it with Red Dead 2, and people lost their minds. Then CD Projekt Red promised no crunch on Cyberpunk, but boom, 6-day weeks became mandatory. Naughty Dog's crew working on The Last of Us Part 2 talked about some serious health issues. Reporters started digging, workers spoke up, unions popped up. Crunch went from, yeah, that's how we do it, to, maybe don't say that out loud. But flip the globe to Asia, overwork is just part of the culture. It's baked into everything. Your salary, your place in the hierarchy, the vibe at work. In Japan, you don't leave before your boss, no matter what. China's 9-6-6 schedule, working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, became a meme for a reason, even though courts say it's illegal. South Korea cracked down after some developers literally died from overtime. But stories of weekend work and workplace bullying still leak out. It sucks, but long hours are just kinda normal there. Now, let's talk pipeline versus prestige. Western AAA studios, they're obsessed with reinventing the wheel every time. New engines, new tools, new IPs, big cinematic dreams. It all blows up their schedule and budget. When you're dropping $200 million on a game, there's no room for error. Miss one milestone, and suddenly people get laid off just to calm the investors. But Japanese and Korean studios, they do it differently. Same engine, tighter scope, polished combat loops, spin-offs for days. Take Persona. They've been remixing the same core formula for years. Monster Hunter sharpens its systems instead of tossing them. From Software reuses bits of their code across Dark Souls, Sekiro, Elden Ring, Armored Core 6. They polish instead of rebuild. Plus, unpaid overtime is just expected. That means they crank out games faster. But again, that comes at a human human cost. China's mobile and gacha games add another twist. These live service games gotta keep dropping content weekly. Events, new banners, bosses. The teams are set up to ship constantly. When the calendar is the product, crunch just becomes part of the schedule. Pressure is different too. In the West, there's public pressure. News outlets covering crunch stories, lawsuits, shareholders breathing down your neck. Unions are actually happening now at places like Sega America and Raven Software. And the big one? If you burn out your top talent, they walk. That forces studios to change. In the East, social pressure's heavy. Leaving early? That's disrespect. Contracts assume you're working overtime with no extra pay. And most work cultures are only just starting to get challenged legally. Laws can change faster than people's habits, though. Is it really black and white? Nah. Plenty of Western indie devs are still crunching because 2 people gotta do the job of 10. Some Asian studios push back. Japan's capping overtime with penalties. Korea's laws look strict on paper. Chinese courts have called out 996. And From Software bumped salaries after bad press. As the world watches, things get messy and mixed. But overall, in the West, your boss knows an expose could drop tomorrow. In much of Asia, your resignation letter probably just gets shredded. So why does it feel like Sony is pulling workers out of California and London while cozying up to Seoul, Tokyo, Shanghai, and Mumbai? Short version, Western AAA costs exploded, margins shrank, and Sony already had pipelines, programs, and partners in Asia that could deliver stylish, lower-cost hits fast. First, the smoke everyone saw. On February 27, 2024, Sony cut about 900 PlayStation jobs, roughly 8% of staff, and said PlayStation London studio would close outright, with reductions at Gorilla and Firesprite too. Herman Hulst also confirmed cuts at Insomniac and Naughty Dog in the US. That was not rumor. It was posted by Sony itself and covered by Polygon and The Verge. Those weren't isolated hits. Pixel Opus, the small San Mateo team behind Concrete Genie, was shut in 2023. Media Molecule trimmed roughly 15 to 20% of staff later that year. In early 2025, reports said PlayStation's visual arts group and even the Malaysian support team took layoffs. The pattern is obvious. Prune or close smaller Western teams. Protect the biggest flagships and tighten spending. Why squeeze so hard? Rising development budgets and weaker return on investment. Sony missed a PS5 sales target, saw its stock dip, and analysts pointed to a near decade-low games margin. Hiroki Totoki told investors there were no major projects before March 2025 and that studios needed to improve schedules and spending. Reuters and The Guardian both framed the layoffs as cost control in a slowing market. In other words, $200 million blockbusters that take 6 years are killing profit. So leadership hit the brakes. Now look at where Sony is still writing checks. China Hero Project, India Hero Project, even a MENA Hero Project. These are formal incubators run out of Asia that give funding, publishing, QA, audio, and marketing support to local teams. The China program alone lists more than a dozen in-production titles like Lost Soul Aside and Convaleria, while India's first cohort was unveiled at a developer conference in 2024. That is infrastructure, not a one-off. Let's dive a little deeper into this Sony and Bandai Namco partnership and why it's a big deal for anime and manga fans everywhere. So, Sony just bought around 2.5% of Bandai Namco for 68 billion yen, about $460,000. But this isn't just about money. It's a strategic move to expand their hold on anime, manga, and related IP worldwide. Why? Because anime and manga are exploding beyond Japan. Think huge global hits like Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, and My Hero Academia. They're massive everywhere now, and the market is only getting bigger. Sony's no stranger to this space. Remember earlier this year when they bought Kadokawa? That was huge. Kadokawa is like the backbone of a ton of anime and light novel content, the source of many big franchises. That move showed Sony wants to control not just the distribution, but also the source material, basically owning the stories from the ground up. Now, combine that with Bandai Namco, which has a massive massive library of iconic IPs like Gundam, Dragon Ball games, Sword Art Online, and tons of merch and games tied to anime culture. Bandai isn't just about games. They're a key player in the whole anime ecosystem. With this partnership, Sony and Bandai want to merge their strengths, Sony's production and global distribution power, plus Bandai Namco's deep IP catalog and experience in fan engagement. They're talking about expanding existing franchises, launching new products and services, and even creating immersive experiences that go beyond just watching or playing. Think VR, AR, or interactive storytelling. They also want to support creators better and push new tech in entertainment, which could lead to fresh ways to experience anime and manga globally. For example, maybe live events, exclusive content platforms, or even new kinds of games that blend storytelling with tech innovations. From a global perspective, this is Sony's big play to dominate the anime market worldwide, not just Japan. The West's appetite for anime keeps growing, and by controlling more pieces of the puzzle, Sony can deliver more exclusive, high-quality content that hooks fans across the globe. Ever hear a rumor so big, it feels like it could shake up your entire favorite hobby? That's exactly what happened in the anime and gaming world late last year. The internet basically exploded with chatter that Sony was about to buy Kadokawa, a massive Japanese media company. If you're wondering why that's a big deal, Kadokawa is a giant. They're involved in everything from manga and light novels to movies, and most importantly for many, they own From Software, the legendary studio behind games like Elden Ring and Dark Souls. The idea of Sony, the company behind PlayStation and the anime streaming service Crunchyroll, getting its hands on that entire treasure chest of content, had fans and investors buzzing. Kadokawa's stock price shot through the roof. The rumors got super real when Kadokawa itself confirmed that, yep, Sony had sent them a letter saying they were interested in buying a big piece of the company. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Gamers, in particular, started to worry. Would future From Software games become PlayStation exclusives? Would the studio that gave us You Died a million times lose its creative freedom? But then, plot twist. Instead of a full takeover, Sony and Kadokawa announced something a little different, a strategic partnership. Think of it less as a buyout and more like a superpowered team-up. Here's what went down. Sony invested a hefty 50 billion yen. That's around $318 million to buy a chunk of Kadokawa. This move made Sony the single biggest shareholder, owning about 10% of the company, but it doesn't give them total control. So what does this mean for us? It's actually pretty exciting. Kadokawa gets to stay independent, but now they have Sony's massive global power to help them out. The whole point of the deal is to work together to make their amazing stories and characters even bigger. Basically, instead of one company swallowing the other, they decided to join forces. If you enjoyed this video, hey, maybe drop a like. It really helps a lot and tells me you want more. Subscribe for day one gaming leaks and news, and check out these videos you probably missed. Trust me, they're worth it.